Marvel's Avengers at launch will offer players 6 different Marvel heroes to play as: Black Widow, Captain America, Hulk, Iron Man, Ms. Marvel, and Thor. And lead combat designer Vince Napoli, formerly of Sony's God of War team, walked IGN through how the Crystal Dynamics team is aiming to make each hero unique and fun to play in their own right. Here we'll be breaking down what makes 3 of these heroes, Iron Man, Ms. Marvel, and Thor, so special, and be sure to watch part 1 to find out about the other playable cast.
Hey, get back here!
Napoli said that leaning into Iron Man's iconography rather than limiting the scope of his moveset to only be used in certain situations allowed the team to figure out their take on Tony Stark.
Well, what if he could use his weapon selection not just in his ranged attacks, but sort of integrate that into his melee combat, like really make that a part of who he is?
Napoli explained how they took Iron Man's repulsor gloves and instead of limiting them to a couple of moves, integrated his iconic weapons into his entire combo system.
That way you can actually see him do a lot more of the iconic posing that you see in the movies and the comic panels. And once we had that down, I was like, well, let's do the same thing with lasers. Let's give him 24 laser attacks that he could use in melee combat. So for example, his heavy combo finish you can unlock actually is a pinning missile, which kind of pins the enemy and then takes them off and propels them into the air and then does different loops into the air and runs different patterns and kind of sends them flying.
Napoli estimates that there are about 36 different attacks incorporating his ranged moves, which can be brought into combos that focus on his standard hand-to-hand combat abilities.
You want to see powers? Here we go.
Kamala Khan, who serves as a major entry point for the story, offered a unique challenge for Crystal Dynamics.
Her abilities for a melee game are kind of a dream and a curse at the same time because you can do anything with them. You can make any kind of, weapon attacks and motions with them. But at the same time, you can do anything with them. And one of the approaches we took actually was to look for any kind of influences we could from the rest of the Avengers with her actual moves. So almost all of her moves are actually based off of some attacks that the other Avengers can do. So you'll notice she's got a version of Black Widow's light trip kick where she sort of sweeps the enemies out. She's got a version of Hulk's shoulder ram attack. She's got a version of almost every character's attack and kind of like the Kamala spin on it. And just to give it that sort of the feel of, yeah, she is learning. She is, and where would she be learning from? Where would she actually draw her inspiration from? Of course, it'd be from the other Avengers.
You're welcome.
Having gotten to go hands-on with him a couple of times, Thor undoubtedly shares some DNA with Kratos in the recent God of War, with his Mjolnir hammer standing in for the Leviathan axe. That's assumedly no mistake given Napoli previously worked on that PS4 exclusive, and it's a great lineage to see continue in the God of Thunder. But of course, in playing within the Marvel sandbox, there is plenty of comics and film inspiration to pull from. And in designing Thor, Napoli noted that Thor Ragnarok played a large influence not just in his playstyle, but in the studio's pitch to Marvel for the character. Quote, "There's a scene in Thor Ragnarok where Odin tells Thor that he's not the god of hammers," Napoli said, explaining that the team pitched for Marvel's Avengers that Thor could both be the god of hammers and the god of thunder and lightning.
Coolest thing about his combat is that at any time, trigger his Odin force and sort of electrify himself, protect himself, counter enemies, but it also has a unique property that it adds to every single one of his attacks. And it isn't just so simple as it just adds lightning damage. It actually completely changes the reaction or the impact or the effect that it will have on the enemy. So you can see kind of what it does and modify each of his attacks.
Napoli explained that the Odin Force, quotes, starts to create a storm of lightning everywhere that offered both defensive and offensive opportunities for Crystal Dynamics to build into Thor. And for his hammer attacks, Napoli said they took a similar approach when it came to creating various uses of Mjolnir, rather than just hewing to one possible mode of combat.
You can kind of change it into this lobbed grenade style toss where it creates lightning explosions and creates sort of cluster bombs, or you can kind of change it into the ability to seek out targets in the battlefield, which is not the way its base throw works.
Oh, hello. Just like old times.
For more, be sure to check out our hands-on experience with Thor and Ms. Marvel, and watch part 1 of this series if you didn't already. And of course, stay tuned all July long for more from our IGN First Marvel's Avengers coverage.
Heroes are people, and people can be corrupted.
If I don't stop them, it's just one more thing to regret on my deathbed.
Times like this, when all things hold us, that's when we got to stay.